A trade war with the United States would decimate the Canadian economy, and in this video we're going to get into why that is the case and why there's no good way out of the potential tariffs that are coming on Canadian goods and all the jobs that will affect. So let's start off with imports into the United States. How much is Canada a big player in that game, and how much does the United States rely on Canada compared to Canada relying on the United States? Well, if you look into the data, 14% of total imports is what Canadian goods represent to the United States. Now, putting a tariff on those goods, and what is a tariff? It is essentially a tax. Tariff is just another word for a tax. It's a government charge that is imposed and levied, and basically it's the importer that pays that charge. So a lot of people are believing by the way Trump is talking and saying that he's going to establish the External Revenue Service, and he's also saying he's actually going to be against expanding government, creating another government entity doing it. But anyways, that's a different topic. But by the way Trump talks, it's almost like you would think that it's the foreign company that pays the tariffs, which is utterly ridiculous. It's not that way at all. It's the importer that pays the tariffs. Now, the thought process with Trump doing this is that it's going to boost the United States jobs and manufacturing. The actual reality of what's more likely to happen is it doesn't do that at all. Think about it. A US company, a massive international company which has manufacturing in China and in Mexico and in other countries, it has organized supply chains around that. Do you think that they're going to reorganize their whole supply chains, move their manufacturing to the United States, which is more expensive, just because the US has a new president for the next 4 years? I mean, it's just completely laughable that he thinks that's going to happen. The reality is he knows it's not going to happen. You see, a lot of what Trump says is hyperbole. He said that he would end the Russia-Ukraine war before taking office. Now he's in office and the war likely will end. He's made his stance clear on that, and he wants negotiations, and I actually think that's very good. But the reality is he hasn't done what he said there with the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which is that it would be over by the time he takes office. Now, back onto the tariffs or the taxes that are going to be added to the goods. You then have to ask the question, well, if Canada is getting into a trade war with the United States, how will it impact Canada if Canada starts imposing tariffs on US goods? Well, let's look at the numbers for that. Most of Canada's goods come from the United States. In fact, 56.2% of all Canada's imports are coming from the United States. So to say that Canada is dependent on the United States is a gross understatement. It's more than dependent on the United States. It's completely attached to the United States. And the thing is, obviously, the US relies on Canada a lot less than Canada relies on the US. And that's the key thing to point out here. A tariff on Canadian and Mexican goods like Donald Trump is proposing, and who knows, by the time this video comes out, he could have already done those tariffs, is going to be catastrophic to the United States as well, because Canadian and Mexican imports are over 27% of the US's imports. So you're getting into those higher numbers. And obviously, like I said, companies are not just going to completely reconfigure everything and move everything to the United States. Number one, if they did that, that would be even more expensive. So if actually what Donald Trump wants to happen happened, you would actually see even higher prices in the United States and obviously Canada as well, because a lot of the goods that come to Canada are from the United States. So the United States imposing these tariffs will have a massive impact on Canada, just from the stance that all the goods that Canada gets from the United States will suddenly suddenly become more expensive. So I find the notion laughable that a lot of financial media has been speculating and a lot of people have been saying that a good policy course for the Bank of Canada would be to drop interest rates to zero, and then suddenly that'll make things a lot better because Canadian households are then not going to be stuck paying these high interest payments. I mean, it's just completely stupid. I mean, that would decimate the currency and that would make the imports from the United States even more expensive. So it's just completely ridiculous. And that's why I say there's no real good solution to this. A trade war basically has two losers, which are both parties in it, because nobody is really going to win from it or benefit. Now, obviously, the United States is also looking at this from the standpoint of revenue. These extra tariffs are taxes collected by the government, and the United States would become more dependent on that, could possibly use the money to then lower taxes in other areas. In reality, if they want to cut back the deficits, which won't happen, then they wouldn't be able to cut taxes. They would just have to use that money to basically bring down their deficits, which again won't happen. Another main risk here, which I think actually could have wider consequences, is the fact that a lot of what Trump says is actually going to do the complete opposite. He says he's going to bring down prices. He's actually going to send prices upwards, with more and more him getting involved in geopolitics and basically joking around that Canada's going to become the 51st state of the United States. And who knows whether he's actually joking about that or it's just more hyperbole. It's really unknown at this point. I mean, he could be serious about it, but I'm not sure why he would want that liability apart from the natural resources in a few provinces. But the problem with that and the Panama Canal, saying that you're going to seize that and that it's under Chinese control, which is completely factually incorrect. Trying to buy Greenland is also going to contribute to anti-US sentiment around the globe. So I think Trump has to be very careful. I don't think he will be, because this is Trump after all. But I think the thing is, he's actually going to push more countries towards China, more countries towards Russia, because there's going to be a lot more anti-US sentiment. I mean, think about it. Where do most of the goods come from that are on those ships going to the United States? They come from China. But you can just imagine how that looks to the population of Panama, how that looks to the population of Greenland. Are they more likely to want more US imports, more deals with the United States in the future? No, it's the complete opposite. In fact, they're being pushed more towards China, as many Asian countries have already gone more towards China than the United States. So this is a classic example of a dying superpower. And basically, this isn't going to happen in 3, 4, 5 years. It's going to happen over decades. But it is obvious when you read books like The Fourth Turning that this is exactly how the flames of superpowers go out. They try and fight, but the fact is the world has changed. It's not the same world it was 60 years ago, and a lot of people might dream that up and think that they can go back to that, but they can't, and not without extreme pain of doing so. And that's the thing. People have to think critically about what these politicians say, and obviously Canada is in a dire state right now, with a government that has prorogued parliament and no real decent negotiating party. Obviously, Trump is a guy that likes to do a lot of talking, and that's with all politicians, but really it's going to be what happens and what the action is that will really judge. So anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, I'd highly recommend that you check out this video here. And if you want to help support the channel, please go to buymeacoffee.com/Market Mania to get early access to new videos. And I will see you in the next one. Take care.